What is the current state of the world and what will be the future of the world? This video will address that issue. And my name is Mark Biernot. I'm getting a PhD in economics, but I spent much of my life studying Russian history, traveled in Russia, Ukraine, and lived in Eastern Europe much of my life. So I think I have a little bit of expertise in this area because right now the world is at a specific juncture. It's at a turning point where we are going to go. We've got the Russian mirror, the Russian world trying to dominate. It seems like a localized struggle in Europe, but it isn't. The reason is the Russians are long-term planners. They know they can dominate the world. Look at their country. They're the largest geographical country in the world. How can you say and make an argument that they don't want world domination if they control most of the land or the largest country in the world? So their first plan, they have 3 steps. Divide the United States. Divide and splinter it into fractions. And they're doing this by appealing to populism and nationalism. It works every time. Worked in the 1930s and 40s. It works today. And I think you know where I mean, in Germany. So this populism and nationalism, really the corollary to that is isolationism, build walls, stick your head in the sand. I don't see it. Just take care of my own feathers. This is not the vision of America, and it never was the vision of America, but it's becoming the vision, and we'll see the effect on that. Similarly, in Europe, in the EU, the Russians are using something called the Internet Agency for Research. Okay, this is nothing more than Russian web brigades in AI, facilitating and amplifying nationalism in every country. Hungary, Slovakia fell. Poland is under influence. The Netherlands, I believe, has recently fallen to this nationalism and is blocking EU aid to do anything about helping out Ukraine. And similarly, the aid, if you noticed, has stopped in America because of this put your head in the sand and be afraid of the world, build walls, nationalism, populism drum. And I don't know where this is coming from, but I do know where. It's being amplified by Russian web brigades. It's hard to believe, but if you do research on this, it is true, and I'm not making this up. I'm not conspiracy theory. I am a PhD researcher. They actually have Russian web brigades influencing the collective unconsciousness of Europe and America to splinter it and bring it to nationalism and populism. Populist movements are very effective at isolating countries. And once they achieve that, they simply move to goal number 2, secure natural resources. They're mining Africa. They are in Cuba, Brazil, and Venezuela. First, my personally interviewing people, firsthand accounts, have confirmed this. They're operating in full strength. And ultimately, they like to extract wealth or at least control this wealth in Venezuela and these other countries, and indirectly influence even the United States. There's not going to be an invasion. The Russians don't need to do that, not at this juncture, if ever. All they have to do is splinter, divide, and influence the U.S. So they're going to be controlling resources around the world and forging strategic alliances with like South Africa, India, and China, North Korea, Iran. These are all, let's say, pro-Axis neutrals, but they're not really neutral. India is buying tremendous oil and gas from Russia. They're getting paid in rupees. They exchange it for, I believe, Hong Kong dollars, which they can swap for Chinese yuan, which they can exchange and buy equipment and electronics they need from China. And similarly, China will move cargo into North Korea and then to Russia, so there's no direct connection. But we can see it. The U.S. can see everything with surveillance. It goes from China to North Korea to Russia. And similarly, this monetary exchange works in that way. India to the the Hong Kong dollar to the Chinese yuan, and then they can do something with the yuan because then they can buy goods. So these strategic alliances and mining of resources are going to expand their sphere of influence around the world so they can achieve objective number 3. Expand land. Specifically this time, bring back Russia to the 19th or 18th century of Imperial Russia. And, it's almost like a Soviet Union 2.0, except it doesn't have the idealism of this, let's say idealism of the proletariat and equality. It's all about the oligarchs. It's about hollowing out other nations so you have servitude and people working for the oligarchs around the world. Their objectives in Ukraine initially were not clear, but it's become more apparent that they don't just want the land. They just don't want the oil and gas. They need the people. They're moving not scores, not tens of thousands, but 100,000 people plus on a regular basis to Russia to re-Sovietize, re-Russify these people. And that's a tragedy because at the end of the day, what do we have? We have orc land. We have the orcs controlling the resources of the world, the largest country of the world already, expanding, dividing the West. Again, all that has to happen for evil to prevail is good men to do nothing. Think about it. Are you one of the people who are calling for peace? But remember, to the Russians, peace is war and war is peace. Everything they say is opposite. So if you take it hook, line, and sinker that they want peace, it's the opposite what they want. They're thinking 100 years into the future, 200 years. They want the Russian world to dominate, the Ruski Mir. They're already the largest country in the world. They're expanding their influence. They're extracting minerals from Africa, the poor suffering souls of Africa, stealing their wealth. They're influencing and they're building. Yes, if you go to Venezuela, I've got firsthand accounts. They are in Venezuela. They are in Cuba. They are in Brazil. They want this South America. They want this Africa. They want Europe gradually and incrementally. Maybe not today, but eventually. And Europe will be splintered and America will be splintered and weak and not able to do anything, not because we don't have the military to defend ourselves, but we'll be so confused and divided, we'll actually start building walls around our country. Now, that may work for a while, but isolationism never works. Think about Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain was a British spokesman in the 1930s, and he proclaimed, "We have peace in our time," because of isolationism and compromise and agreement and negotiation with Germany in the 1930s. And he became kind of like a laughingstock. I don't want to say a laughingstock, but he was fully discredited when what happened next. So unless the world gets their head out of the sand, they better wake up. Because, there's another saying, the lazy man works twice as hard. Think about it. We waited for Japan and, 1941 before the U.S. woke up. And maybe if we, in the words of Polish statesman Józef Pilsudski in the 1920s and 30s, crushed the adder in the egg, we wouldn't have to have gone through that. And so, similarly, maybe someday America could wake up, but it's hard to say because these orcs are masters at propaganda and influencing the collective subconsciousness of the minds. Look at their own population. Their own population is submissive. I can guarantee you they will not rebel. There'll be no second Russian Revolution because the Russians I would say there's a low probability. You can never predict the future. They have subdued them with this propaganda, and that is eventually what is going to happen. And it looks like it's going to happen in the United States. We'll see who wins the next election and how this all goes. But this is the world, not today, not only today, but 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, 200 years in the future. The orcs very well could dominate the world. And you have to ask yourself, is that the world you want to live in? Leave a comment below. Thank you very much.